the '07 budget. But before we do that, we're going to give Chairman Yates a chance to talk about his proposal for the '08 budget while we're waiting on the tracking document. And by the way, Chairman Yates, we've got 3 members that are itching to get out of here. I told them it wouldn't take but 5 to 10 minutes. So,
well, you said we got to come back later on this, but I guess I just don't give them a copy today.
Okay. Thank you.
There's 2 items. The Griffin campus, University of Georgia, was presented about a month ago by Dr. Arkin down there. And what happened there is the local people in Griffin voted a $10 million bond package under SPLOST, and the money's being collected now to then they'll give this building to the University of Georgia Griffin campus. In this budget this year, we're asking for the $640,000 carried over from last time, plus the governor has put in $500,000 for the teaching. And then in addition to that, this building, we're asking for $2,160,000 for all the infrastructure needed to get the internet and all this other stuff connected. That's the one item, and it can go in either budget. I understand we're talking about 2007 this year. We came up with another thing down there and got an tentative agreement between the Griffin Spalding County School System, who owns an old high school, recently a middle school next door. Griffin Tech is landlocked now, and this would give them 11 acres more land, and this would, the part we'd want to get in this year, because time is of the essence on the thing, is it'd be $2.5 million. The property is appraised at over $3.5 million, and it's right next door. It'd be very valuable there. And it would take $2.5 million to buy it. They've got a tentative agreement between the Griffin Tech and the technical people up here, and to buy that. And then next year we'd come back with money to refurbish it. And I'll pass out these so that people can be looking at it before we meet again on this. Is that satisfactory?
Any questions from the committee? All right. Any committee members have any requests for the '07 budget while we're here? And while we're waiting on the tracking document, we've got a little time here. I apologize to the members that need to leave, but they told me they'd have it here by close to 10. Any questions? Any comments? Relating to the technical and adult education, we've got based on the funding formula, enrollment decline reduction of $7.162 million coming up for the '08 budget. And I've asked the technical and adult education people to come up with a white paper, and I will be passing this out to you relating to their reasoning why we should or shouldn't fund should fund the additional $7.162 million. Then the Board of Regents have got about 5 or 6 or 7 requests that many of you have gotten. One relating to tuition carry forward. That's a Senate Bill 111 that I don't know if any of y'all have seen Senate Bill 111, but they dropped it in the Senate, and we were alerted to it. The second thing is the post-employment benefits that the university system is encouraged to seek legislation that parallels legislation previously passed. Another one that they're going to be looking at is equity investments, wishes to exempt privately raised funds and endowments and investments. The other one is performance contracts. The university system which wishes to have ability to enter into multi-year lease purchase contracts. And these are some of the things that they're bringing forward. One thing that when we did get the tracking document, that there's an urgent need for one-time appropriations of $45,000 for equipment replacement for the agricultural technical. Well, these university system had long names for these things, but anyways, for equipment replacement for the agricultural technology research program for the poultry and agribusiness sector at the Georgia Tech Research Institute. And this is a ion high pressure liquid chromatograph. Can you pronounce that, Mr. Chairman, over there? Did I sound that right, Mr. Chairman Earhart? Okay. It's over 10 years old, and it's the most heavily used and analytical instrument in the program. It supports numerous projects, including analysis of chemical compounds and ongoing water recycle research, wastewater treatment analysis, waste byproduct recovery research, and chiller water chemistry management research. And they've invested M&S funds in recent years. I'm going to read this thing to you because it's an item that I'd like to see in this supplemental. If it's your pleasure. Another one is Chairman Royal. If you would explain this $200,000 request you have in the 07 supplemental budget relating to the water policy.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Water Policy Planning Committee is located in Albany, Georgia. They do a lot of research, and they have been funded through the Soil and Water Conservation in the past, but they're having trouble getting the money. We have requested $200,000 for the balance of this year. They've lost their federal fundings. They get federal funding too, and if we don't get the $200,000, we're going to have to shut the doors down. And we've requested that we put it in Albany State in the Regent's budget. But they do a lot of research. We're going to develop a water plan that's going to be presented in July of this year, and we're going to have to pass that in next year's legislative session. But this center provides all type of research and educational work and helping deal with all the water issues in South Georgia.
Mr. Chairman, could you explain, did Georgia Southern get their funding?
Georgia Southern, I am told, did get their funding, and the Water Policy Planning Center in Albany did not get their funding.
Chairman Earhart.
We've heard two requests now. Okay, here's the tracking down. What I was going to suggest is that my assumption is there are very few changes to the supplemental budget. I'd like to know, I think these are reasonable requests. I'd like to know where you plan to cut in the...
With what, sir?
Where we plan to get the money, where the cut is,
right.
Where you're going to move it around from.
If you'll look at, you have your tracking document now, turn to, I got to see what we have here.
I'll look on Chairman Roy.
Okay. If you'll turn to page 4 of 6 on the tracking document, Mr. Chairman Earhart. The university system has requested funds for the university system health plan to meet projected needs for FY07. They requested 2.5, and talking with legislative House budget officers, they suggested we could, I suggested, based upon the analysis, that we could offer $2 million.
So that will give you the money to do both the projects?
Yes, sir, and still have a little bit left over.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Yes, sir. So if you look at line 39.8.1, is $45,000 for the ion high-pressure liquid, and then on line 39.19.1 is $200,000, and that leaves a balance of whatever the difference is, $382. Is that right? What's the difference, Scott? I got to do my math. Right at 255, $255,000.
Still leaves $275,000.
Would go back into the general fund, the green door.
You ready for a motion?
I am, sir. Entertain a motion. We have a motion and a do pass and a second. Everybody ready to vote? All in favor of this the 07 supplemental budget, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you for being here. Anybody else wants to talk about a certain budget request? We're here. I'll be willing to listen to you now for 08 budget. Anybody? We'll do it later. Okay.
I
Yes, ma'am.
have a budget request for
Yes.
biologists for tomato spotty wilted virus.
Okay.
No, wait, budget.
If you have to leave, members, you can. We're just going to informal discussion here. Representative House,
In the 08 budget, I had a request for
will you pull the microphone up, please?
Thank you. In the 08 budget, I'm requesting a researcher for spotty wilt tomato virus. And I think I've talked with the dean, and this virus is affecting the vegetable growers in South Georgia, and the economic impact is about $18 million estimated a year, and requesting $150,000 for a research person. And I think you'll find in the agricultural proposal they have included this and the change in the ag budget.
Chairman Housen, what else does this tomato virus affect besides tomato plants?
Oh, it affects peanuts. It affects all sorts of vegetables, not just tomato virus. And one thing, I know a lot of times people, it's really prominent in South Georgia, but something you might be able to relate to it, Mr. Chairman, is like fire ants. You know how fire ants came to South Georgia and then they just came on up to North Georgia? Well, this is in South Georgia and it is coming to North Georgia, and we need to stop it and do some research on it.
How far along are we in the process, the research and development?
I'm sorry, I couldn't answer that question.
Okay. But it's ongoing, right?
Yeah, it would be an ongoing person till we stop the virus, and then after we get the virus stopped, we can let the physician go.
Oh, so you're telling me the virus, they're not even they're researching it, but there's really no...
to research the virus.
Okay. So this would be a startup?
A startup.
Okay.
And it would be a permanent position until we found out what caused the virus.
And how long do you suspect it would take to... is this, once you got into this, would it be ongoing? Or?
Well, I hope we could do it in a few years. I don't know. I'm not a biologist.
Okay.
But it has a big economic impact on the vegetable market in South Georgia.
Is this a suggestion for the Extension Service?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I got a question from Representative Henry, Chairman Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we've talked about this before, but it's about our public libraries. The governor made no recommendations for funding of libraries in his budget, and I think that's very critical to our communities that we provide library funding. So I hope that we as a committee can do what we can in the process to make sure that some of these libraries get funded so they don't totally stop the process. They're vital to our communities, both our education system. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that to the committee's attention because it's something that I feel is very important to our communities, and we need to show support in funding some of these programs around the state.
Along that line, do you think that we need to, this is an informal session here, along that line, do you think we need to have 2 or 3 members on this subcommittee work on that, 2 or 3 on some other subjects? You think that'd be a good way to do it over the next week and a half?
I think so. I think so because it gives us a chance to, at least a few of us, to look at the concerns. Maybe there's a reason why some of the funding did not exist, but obviously I think it's important to a lot of people. So we need to find out why and perhaps get some answers. And there's a lot of specific areas in higher education budget that we need to look at funding. So I'd be willing to do that if you like.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other questions about Representative Houseman's comments? We moved off of that before we finished.
One other thing, too, a lot of local governments have money that they are ready to put in in libraries, and that they're ready to come up with their part of the funds. If we could just help them along.
I'll tell you what we'll do is sometime today I'll come up with a list of groups, maybe minor projects, major projects in both DPA and Regents, and put 2 or 3 on each of those, and 2 or 3 with the libraries, and let y'all go to work on what you think the priorities are now. I got another light on 24. Is that yours? Okay. One other thing that... Who's that? Oh, okay. What number are you? 29. Okay.
You touched on it a minute ago, but I'd really like to talk about it a little bit more in an informal way, if you can. This DAE funding crisis, supposedly due to the lack of...
Could you pull the mic closer, so I can hear you?
Yeah. You know, we had the meeting. Is that on? Can you hear that?
Let's see.
Somebody try 28?
Yeah, try 28. Try 28. That requires getting up, Chairman. My friend. And, oh, by the way, I apologize for in your meeting the other day, sir. For
Is that better?
That's fine. Thank you, sir.
The DTAE situation where we've got the funding formula, in my opinion, is really at issue. I think there's a consensus that we need to backfill the $7 or $8 million. And there certainly is in my mind. But I think what we heard in the testimony the other day is that this is the beginning symptom or maybe cause as to why the funding formula is not going to be adequate. I think it's flawed. I know in public education, where we come up with the FTE or whatever it is formula, it took me a month to even come close to trying to figure that out. I don't think I still have. But I do know that there are different values given to different classifications of students, and there are different expenses associated with educating different classifications of students in the K through 12 arena, and different nomenclature assigned. And then there's an overall weighted average depending on census and population and so forth. It seems to me that the DTAE formula maybe it maybe has become obsolete over time in the ranking of the cost of providing, especially a lot of the scientific-oriented courses like the nurses training that's so vital to us. The clinical expense associated with that is, in my opinion, and I think testified by the folks that are experts in that area, far more than what any reimbursement formula would allow on a per-head basis. The decline, unfortunately, of students at the DTAE, it's hard for me to say for some reason, I apologize, level has not been in the courses that we need the most, like the nursing and the medical alliance kind of courses. It's been in other areas to where there was sort of a profit margin. In other words, it's been in areas where you could have a part-time, very low-paid instructor comparatively, and those kids aren't coming back at the level, and they're being replaced by the ones that are more expensive than what the funding formula deals with. So I would just challenge this committee to take a leadership role, and not only, the short-term solution is, yeah, we ought to backfill the $7 million. But the long-term solution is that's evidence that there's flaw in the formula. And I would hope that we would take a look at the formula for the future, because of all of the programs and education we have out there, I'm not sure anything works any better than a 98 point whatever it is rate of getting folks a job when they come out of training. I'm not sure that anything works any better than the GED kind of courses, where people get mature a lot later in life and come back through our DTAE universities and get their graduate exam work done and their literacy work done, and all that undergirds in our society, because it literally does instill the hope to that population that didn't get mature enough to take advantage of hope at a younger age, that hasn't heretofore been there. And I think these institutions serve just a tremendous role, vital role in that, in undergirding and bringing into self-responsible society a lot of folks that would get dropped by the wayside. And if our formula is inadequate, I think we really need to address that. And it was interesting in the testimony that we heard from the from the folks. It'd be easy for them just to try to find to blame something like the certificate program or this, that, or the other. But the testimony we got from them was comprehensive in scope, and I think we owe it to that entire universe of folks to research the flaws in this formula and see if we can't, as well as deal with the budget issues, deal going forward with making that formula more fair and adequate and transparent and accountable. I think they're willing to be accountable too. So
we've already got a funding formula study committee in place. It's a 1.5 year long thing, and we started it last year with some preliminary meetings and plan to attack it after the day 30. John Brown is the one that in our budget office is the one that's going to spearhead this, and we have $150,000 in the budget from last year's budget to hire outside consultants relating to the funding formula for both DTAE and the Board of Regents. And in addition to that, the funding formula study calls for not only the funding formula to be looked at, but also capital priorities and how we can perhaps incentivize capital projects in our university and technical and adult system. So after day 30, we will have, we'll ramp it up and have a couple of meetings here, by the way, to save per diems. We'll have it while we're in session, maybe an hour, hour and a half, but 2 meetings. And then after the session, we'll be in the process of hiring some outside people to come in and tell us what they think about what you're alluding to. Because there's a serious problem that we've noticed. Even one of the former chancellors alluded to the fact that it's very difficult to understand in the public forum that we had. And I think you're dead on. And I did talk with the Senate leadership about ours is a standalone House study committee. Last year it was we had 2 bills in the hopper, one House alone, and the other one House, Senate, Governor. Well, that one fell by the wayside. But this past winter, I talked with leadership of the Senate, and they're willing to do a joint House Senate study committee, so we could pick up where they could pick up where we're moving from. Does that make any sense? But after day 30, we'll be moving on this. Representative O'Neill, relating to that. Got some other red lights. Who's 21? Representative Yates. What are you folks?
When are we taking up the bonding for this budget?
We're still, what number are you? You're 21? The question was when we're going to take up the bonds and other 08 projects.
07.
07? There aren't any for 07. Unless we do it Green Door. So the schedule is
the governor's decision and what?
What's that?
The governor's decision, no bonds, is that it?
What's your number, Scott?
There are no bonds in the supplemental package.
Yeah. What's your number?
60.
Okay. Can you hear it?
I believe that's statewide.
Statewide.
So these projects that we talked about are going to be all in 08? Is that what you're saying?
It could perhaps be, yeah.
Perhaps.
We got a lot on the table.
As Margaret Thatcher said, don't go wobbly on me now.
Were you in the military?
I was in the military in a war. I know all about fighting. I'm fighting for Griffith.
Who's 24?
That's me.
Representative Hendry.
I would like to comment on Chairman O'Neill's point too, and say that we publicly say we do need to address that formula for DTAE. For example, the technical college in my area has grown by 4%, yet they are going to be subject to some of these cuts. And so it's unfortunate because some areas are growing and some programs are growing, but because of the formula is set the way it is, our programs will suffer. And I don't think that's the right approach, so I think we need to look at that more closely. But I'll also say publicly that I hope that the Department of Technical and Adult Education will look more closely at their programs. And I know that they had some problems because in the 90s they were pushing the computer programs, and of course that's changed. But there almost seems to be an urgency just to fill spaces sometimes, and that I don't believe is the best long-range approach. And what I mean by that is some of the courses, for example, cosmetology, culinary arts, there's a need there, but at the same time I think that if we look more long-term, when we look at programs like nursing and some other medical areas, I think that it would be a better approach if we try to look at those from a long-term standpoint instead of having that push just to fill spaces. So anyway, I think that we need to all try to help out and trying to help them better address some of their program issues over time, because I think that's the only good solution to helping them. But that formula has definitely got some flaws that we need to look at, and I'm glad that the study committee is going to take that on.
In addition to what y'all are commenting on, one of the problems with their shortfall is that the funding formula calls for X number of dollars per credit hour, is the way I understand it. Well, if you're during the .com era, you had a number of kids that wanted to be computer analysts and et cetera, and now that's sort of gone off the chart a little bit. There's still demand for it, but not as much as a health care. And we in the legislative body are asking and requiring both the regents and technical and adult to move in that direction, because a crisis is perhaps looming for both medical doctors, allied health, and the like. And so now the technical colleges are moving from .com to allied health, and instead of $100 credit hour or whatever the number is, it's now $400 a credit hour. So sort of in a catch-22, they're doing what the market forces are saying, and I must tell you that 66%, last I heard, 66% of the professors or teachers in the technical and adult are adjunct professors, meaning that they put a sign-up sheet for students in the technical schools, and once they meet that minimum classroom size, they'll call the adjunct professor up and say, we have a class for you. That's pretty good market force at work. But at some point, if you keep laying off your full-time professors or teachers at the technical, you start to lose a little loyalty. Because if you go from 66 to 73% of adjunct professors, you're teetering on not having any loyal at your base technical college. But I think that as we go forward, this is the funding formula is not only just for technical and adult. We look at the Board of Regents, and you look at the University of Georgia, and they have, I'm told, the largest number of historic buildings in the entire system, and they're by law required to maintain them in a reasonable fashion. And you know what it costs to maintain an old building. So somehow or another, that's got to be addressed as well. Capital projects is a huge problem. We have requests for 1.5 billion, and I don't know how much we're going to fund this year, but last year it was 320 million in the regents and 82 or 83 in the technical and adult. I don't think we'll see that this year. But Representative Henry, come on in.
Speaking about adjunct faculty and talking about the Board of Regents, that's something I really think we need to look at too. For example, at the University of Georgia, we're accommodating the best and the brightest students Georgia's ever produced now because of the standards that have been developed over the University of Georgia. But my concern is, though, because we're stretching the dollar, so some of the professors at the university are adjunct professors just because of the I guess strains on faculty salary. And I've spoken to several faculty members, and these people have published. These people have reached the height of their potential in careers, but yet the salaries that we offer them are sometimes things that you would just never possibly guess that a professor at a university system would make. So I think we need to look at these salaries and talk to the members and try to figure out some kind of solution, because if we're going to send our best and brightest to our best schools, when they get there, we want to make sure that they have the best and the brightest of faculty and professors to teach them. So I think we need to, we're moving ahead forward and we're doing some good things, but there are some faculty needs that need to be addressed, most importantly, the salary.
Any other questions, comments? How about requests from the committee members for 08 budget? Anybody want to air them now? Because we'll do this again, I don't know when. Tomorrow the vice chair meeting is all day, and then Thursday I think Green Door is all day. And next week's wide open. If you all want to come and discuss the various budget and bond projects, we can do that next week, maybe Thursday or Friday. What's your number?
23. Those meetings you described tomorrow and Thursday, that's just restricted to the 07 supplemental, right?
07.
It's not 08 yet.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the question did you get tomorrow and Thursday's 07 only. But we really need to start moving, because the train's moving down the track pretty quickly after we pass 07 next Monday, I believe, Tuesday probably. When we come back in, the 19th, Monday?
19th.
Yeah,
Monday.
2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
So I really would like to, if anybody wants to meet next Thursday to go over some of the minor projects that requests that we have on the table, I'd be willing to do that not this Thursday, but next Thursday. Anybody okay with the Thursday or Friday next? Spend a couple of hours informally. Thursday? Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for being here, and meeting adjourned. You got it? Okay.